evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this evening's live stream. We have an international special guest, as we often do. Later on, I will introduce him in just a little while when I've been through a few news items. First, there's probably going to be a bit of a dip in our audience this evening because we're in Facebook's bad books again. You might have seen that. We were banned from Facebook, banned from posting for a few days. And our page is still restricted, I think, for about 2 weeks from now. Because our crime, again, has been to state our policy with regards to gender recognition, etc. Facebook has decided that our policy amounts to hate speech. So when I put up a post, where we can sort of go a couple of weeks ago now, but yeah, about a week ago, just clarifying our policy in contrast to the other parties, hate speech, that was removed. And then the video I made analysing Nicola Sturgeon's infamous interview on the topic. I think it's on 41,000 views on YouTube. I just tried to paste the link, the YouTube link, into Facebook, and it said hate speech. So we always appeal, but the appeal's never upheld. So that's that. So in the bad books, they're threatening all sorts. I've complained again to the Electoral Commission on the grounds that Facebook is a foreign corporation and it is supplying a service to political parties in Scotland on a differentiated basis. It's not providing the same service to all parties. For example, the SNP can put forward any of their policies on Facebook. Their page is never restricted. That's all absolutely fine. Whereas the Facebook does not offer that service to the Scottish Family Party. So I believe under Electoral Commission rules, Facebook is effectively making a gift in kind to the SNP and the Conservatives and Labour and the Lib Dems and the Greens. In other words, to all the other parties, they're making a gift in kind, and they're not giving that gift, which is free and open use of their platform, to the Scottish Family Party. Now, if they were giving the same gift to all parties and they said, this is just really even-handed to all, then I believe that would be okay. But if they're differentiating between different parties, discriminating between parties, then surely what they give to the other parties that they don't give to us must be classed as a gift. So therefore, its monetary value must be estimated and declared to the Electoral Commission. And if that's over £500, which it obviously would be, then that would be illegal because Facebook are a foreign corporation. It's illegal for foreign corporations to make donations to UK political parties. So I believe Facebook is making donations in kind to the Greens, the Lib Dems, Labour, the SNP and the Conservatives in Scotland by giving them use of their social media platform without charge. And they're not giving that same gift in the same way to the Scottish Family Party. Right, the Electoral Commission doesn't seem to see my point at the moment, but I will persevere with them and see where we get with that. And let's face it, the other thing with Facebook is it's very frustrating because you never know when they're suddenly going to say hate speech and you're banned, you're suspended. It's not as though sometimes we'll think, oh, shall we put this on Facebook? This is a bit edgy. This is taking it a bit further than usual. This might be a really risky post. Shall we risk this one? Oh, yeah, go on, let's risk it. It's not like that. It's just we do our usual routine. I mean, often, for example, on the transgender issue, we say the same thing again and again and again on social media. But you might say it 3 times, nothing happens. Say it the 4th time, bang, hate speech. And then you try and appeal it, but there's probably, it's just done by some robot or at best someone maybe who barely speaks English, maybe, who knows. Or maybe someone who's been trained by Nick Clegg to recognize hate speech. Anyway, so that's a US corporation interfering in Scottish politics. And we'll see what we can do about that. There's a massive protest in Glasgow and George Square on Sunday. A protest against the gender recognition reform and a counter-protest as well. Some of the Glasgow branch of the Scottish Family Party were there. It was fantastic. We've got some great photographs. So well done to them. Thanks for going along and showing waving the family party flag, quite literally there. I've just seen this evening the story about Humza Yousaf, who was complaining that some nursery was racist because they wouldn't let his son in. And apparently the Care Commission looked into it and they did criticize the nursery, but apparently they didn't criticize them for anything remotely to do with racism, just that there were some, inconsistencies in their admissions process or inefficiencies or whatever. But Humza Yousaf, he seems like he is constantly on the prowl, ready to pounce on anyone that he thinks is racist towards him or Islamophobic or whatever. He really is, he's ready to pounce. And he's had court case after court case against people who said things, sometimes stupid things, but, fairly typical online sort of nonsense. But Humza Yousaf gets them prosecuted. Humza Yousaf tried to really have a go at this nursery. It got a legal action underway against them, but they've dropped it. Humza and his wife have dropped the legal action. One suspects because they realized it was actually a lot of nonsense. And the nursery, to their credit, haven't meekly said, oh, we're very glad he's dropped it and we've learned our lesson. The nursery is saying this never had any substance at all. And it was just basically Humza Yousaf trying to pick a fight over nothing. And that's a government minister. So I'm going to look into that case. I'll try and find time to look into that case and read the Care Commission report and see exactly what happened. But I think Humza Yousaf's behavior is a race baiter. He wants to find racial conflict in any way he can. I think it's very unpleasant and it seems quite insidious to me. We published an article, well, we didn't publish, UK Column published an article that I wrote this week about sexual rights. Now, sexual rights get talked about, but actually, officially, they don't exist in any formal sense. But International Planned Parenthood Foundation decided they'd write some sexual rights. And my point in the article is basically, if you look at their sexual rights, they amount to telling children that they've got a right to have sex at any age, basically when they feel like it. That's the message behind these sexual rights. Well, it's not just behind them, it's quite explicit in them. I mean, the idea of an age of consent is just completely absent from them. I did make a small mistake in the article that's now been corrected. I thought that International Planned Parenthood Foundation was one and the same with Planned Parenthood, but they're actually two different organizations. But they're just as bad as each other. So I had to clarify, well, they just had to slightly edit the article. But do have a read of that. You'll see it on our social media, and you'll find that very interesting, I would hope. I saw some video of people at the in George Square, the sort of pro-trans protesters. They're wearing their outrageous clothes. They've got green hair, clothes ripped to bits, like men dressed as women, women dressed as men, dancing up and down. And yeah, I mean, you can imagine the scene. And every time I see that in Scotland, I want to put a label underneath saying conformists, because these are the people who are on the side of the government. I mean, if you look at the youth, think, oh, they're the real rebels. They're really challenging the establishment. No. These sort of people with every colour hair and ripped up clothes and chains all over them, and you name it. They're the conformists. They're the ones who are going along with the establishment. It's quite fascinating. Quite a few of the characters you see involved in this, in pushing the hyper-liberal agenda, if you look into their private lives, I mean, they are basically, well, what other word can you use? I mean, perverts. But they're sexual deviants, if you look at their other activities that they're happy to share on social media. But anyway, that was that. What else have been going on? There's been talk of the teachers' strikes. Now, I think that's quite the whole issue of strikes. The Scottish Family Party doesn't have a position. So maybe I'm talking a bit more personally here. But I think the situation with strikes, we've often got people who get paid average wage, above average wage in Scotland. And so they're going on strike. They'll always present it. Oh, it's for the good of the children. It's for the good of the patients. It's for the good of this, that, and the other. No, it's not. They want more money. I mean, at least be honest. I mean, whether you agree with the strikes or not, at least be honest. Striking to get more money. And where's that money going to come from? Well, one effect of like huge wage increases will be increased inflation, which makes everyone else's money worth less. If the government spends more money on salaries for one type of worker, that's less money for other things. So if you're worried about like funding the NHS, if salaries go up a lot more, then there's going to tend to be less money for other things. So where do they want money to be cut? What about people can I go on strike from the Scottish Family Party and demand an inflation matching pay increase? I mean, no, I mean, that'd be laughable. That'd be the most ridiculous thing to do. And it seems like every political party in Scotland, they just do the electoral maths and they say, right, how many teachers are there? I don't know, probably tens of thousands. That's a lot. We can't afford to upset all those. So no political party will condemn strike action by any group in society, which I find quite curious. It's as though none of them have got any principles. They're all just chasing the votes, doing the electoral calculus, and working out what's going to be most beneficial to say. Maybe the family party needs to consider a position, but my position, personally, is that I would tend to be unsympathetic to people going on strike, particularly when their salaries are already very healthy, in many cases, above average. And this is a tough time for everyone. The job of unions is to try and increase the pay of their members. But to be failing to do your job, to be damaging people's healthcare, to be damaging the education of your children, in order to get, the head teachers, in one case, they were arguing in some cases, for a £9,000 a year rise. They're threatening to go on strike in order to get a rise of £9,000 a year. Now, I think people of a very left-wing persuasion should find it quite hard to swallow that it's right to be disrupting the education of children in order to get an extra £9,000 a year on top of your £100,000 a year salary. I don't really see that as the great workers of the world unite sort of cause. Doesn't quite add up to me. Right, farmers have been in the news a little bit as well. I said Edinburgh City Council's decided to go vegan in schools, I think in care homes as well. The poor folks in the care homes, what are they going to be making of it? So you're going to have like an 89-year-old suddenly being told, right, you're a vegan now. Is that what's happening? It seems that way from their policy. But in schools, I really object to them going vegan because that's like practical indoctrination. But farmers' organisations in Scotland have objected as well, saying it's anti-farming. And this is part of a worldwide issue. If you see what's happening in the Netherlands, the government is wanting basically to shut down about half of the farms in the Netherlands in order to reduce pollution. It's just too bizarre. Food prices are already quite high. And the less food there is made around the planet, the higher they'll go. But the Netherlands is just cutting its food, slashing its food production. And then they'll have to rely on buying it from elsewhere, which will just put up food prices in general. So Dutch farmers are absolutely up in arms about this because they've just been told basically, your livelihood, your tradition, your family business for generations, forget it, it's over because we've got to protect the environment. It just seems bizarre what's going on there. Now, when something bizarre and appalling is going on in other countries, you can normally guess the Scottish government's looking over there and thinking, why don't we try that? Well, we will not be supportive of that if that sort of thinking comes to Scotland. A couple more things for introduce our special guest. The Church of England has been discussing same-sex marriage. They're basically all over the place. Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, says he won't perform the ceremonies, but he's delighted that the church will. And the politicians of Labour and Conservative MPs have been putting pressure on the Church of England, saying they really should, they need to do that. Maybe we should strip them of their charitable status, etc., if they won't perform same-sex marriages. Now, it just reminded me again, because this is an issue that the Scottish Family Party has got under consideration, of whether or not we should make it our policy to oppose same-sex marriage. The reason we would oppose it, it's not so much that we want to deny lesbian and gay people a sort of day that they call a wedding. It's the fact that we want to promote a form of relationship that's ideal for bringing up children, which has been brought up by the natural parents. So we believe that that's what marriage should encapsulate, and therefore in promoting marriage, then you're promoting this ideal family setup for bringing up children. So it's under discussion, but hearing the politicians putting pressure on the Church of England, saying basically, how dare you refuse to marry same-sex couples? It just, certainly speaking personally, it sort of nudges me in the direction of maybe we should make that family party policy, just to clarify what's the relationships we're promoting where we're promoting marriage. Right, one last thing that I'll introduce our special guest. We had candidate training Friday evening. That was brilliant. At our first session, and there's about 25 people there. If you want to join in next time, it's every fortnight. you can join in next time. We would love to see you to just explore the possibility of being a candidate in the Westminster election when it comes around. And if you're interested in that, email campaign manager at scottishfamily.org. Campaign manager, all one word, at scottishfamily.org. So email there and you can get on the list and we'll send you the invitation for next time. Right, I would now like to introduce our special guest all the way from Sweden. And here is Mats. Right, thanks very much for joining us. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you. Richard, you're my kind of guy. I really like your presentations and your arguments. I enjoy listening to you. Thank you.
Oh, very good, very good. Right, delighted to hear that. If my Swedish were better, I maybe could return the compliment. but
then no one would understand what you're saying anyway. So, except me.
So Mats is the leader of the Christian Values Party in Sweden, which is a party with I think many similarities to the Scottish Family Party. So it will be fascinating to compare notes and to compare the different situations in our respective countries. So we're going to have lots and lots to talk about. But do you want to start off just telling us a bit about yourself, where you are in Sweden, about your background?
Yes, absolutely. Sorry for my American accent. I studied in the US. I studied philosophy of religion. I'm a philosopher, theologian, work with apologetics, Christian apologetics in Sweden. And Sweden being one of the most secularized countries in the world, probably the most individualistic country in the world. We have a lot of these sentiments that you just talked about, the woke movement and the postmodern and the trans and all of this. And when I lived in Los Angeles, where I studied philosophy of religion and ethics, I met Americans and they said that, yeah, California is so liberal. And I go like, what are you talking about? You have a church in every street corner. What? This is not liberal. Come take a liberal university in the United States and make a country out of it. There you have Sweden. This is what I'm used to. This is heaven for me.
Yeah.
So this is the situation. I'm a former atheist. I became a Christian when I was 15. Now I'm 50 plus something, and most of my life I've been defending the Christian faith. And I'm also a strong pro-life activist. I started a pro-life ministry in Sweden that we call, we have different names in English and Swedish, but in English it's called CBR Sweden. It's a branch of CBR in the United States, Center for Bioethical Reform. And we work with images, showing aborted babies in the public square, confronting the abortion liberal mindset head on. No hands in between, just head on, and to show that this is a small human being. This is lethal, deadly violence to a small human being. You can see it with your own eyes. So from this movement, so to speak, we just felt like we need to have something to vote for, because we just have to follow our conscience. So we started the Christian Value Party in 2014. There was people around these, pro-life activism people and some other people. We were just 8 people starting it in a church. We're not a confessional party, which is, sometimes people mix that up, of course, because we have the Christian Value Party, but it's really stressed on value here. It's a Christian values, not the Christian confession. So we are not a Catholic party or a Protestant party. We have Catholics, Protestants, Orthodox, and some non-believers as well. So, and we've existed since 2014. We've run 2 elections and 3 actually, 2014, 18, and now 22. And we've been growing, not very much. We're still a pretty small party. We're, I think, the 17th biggest party in Sweden. But just our existence is, people think we're a joke. They think like, does that even exist in Sweden? So So it's like lighting a match. It's like saying, yes, we do exist and we intend to stay and we're not backing down. And this mentality is kind of unusual even for Christians, because Christians are very much, dodging, being silent, being, marginalized, and even in their own mentality, there is a lot of, how would you say, fear of men, being wise. Being wise, that is always to not confront. That is always to withdraw. That is
Mhm.
wisdom, obviously, according to many. And I say, well, wisdom is not that. Wisdom is to know when to be silent and when to scream.
Mhm.
That is wisdom. And sometimes you need to scream. Sometimes you really need to stand up and speak the truth, and to do it right in the face of those who are promoting death and destruction of society. So our two biggest issues is, of course, the abortion issue. We believe in the dignity of all human life, even the unborn, of course, and marriage. Because when marriage is dissolved, it will always be the weakest parties that will suffer the most, especially the children. That's what's going to happen when you abandon the idea of marriage, which we are
Mhm.
been doing since the 60s in Sweden, of course. So, well, yeah, well, that's, I don't know, a
Yeah,
brief.
that's fascinating. Fascinating. So on those two issues, the pro-life issue and the marriage issue, what's the state of play in Sweden? We work with CBR in Britain, by the way.
Oh yeah,
Quite a few of our supporters are involved with CBR, and yeah,
yeah,
there are
CBR UK.
elements of cooperation. So,
Yes, yes.
well,
And Andy Stevenson was our first contact. I was in charge of CBR's international network when Andy jumped on. So I visited. Was it Brighton, where he lived in Brighton? So I was one of the guys starting CBR UK. Just
oh,
for you
okay.
to know.
Uh-huh. So what's the score with pro-life activism? Is there a big movement in Sweden? Is it? No.
No, I wouldn't say it's a big movement. It was bigger in the 90s, and it kind of fell asleep. And 2004, we started CBR Sweden. And by that point, well, of course, there's a little tension within the pro-life movement. Should you be kind of nice, or should you be very straightforward and confrontative? And I do believe that we must be confrontative. That's not what everyone needs to do, but there's different roles here. And of
Mhm.
course, we should never use violence or anything immoral per se.
Mhm.
So, but we need to be straightforward. We need to do like Martin Luther King did, to have a modulated conflict, a conflict that is so strong that it cannot be ignored. Still, that we don't fall off our moral high horses, so to speak. We have to keep
Yeah.
a high moral standard in what we're doing, which could be very difficult when people are very
Yeah.
mean to you. So it's a good practice in virtue,
Mhm.
really. So in Sweden, when we stand and do this, it's like it's kind of unheard of. People take for granted that everyone is liberal when it comes to abortion. It's probably some between 5 to 15% of the population who are abortion critical, and maybe 1 to 3% that are very negative to abortion. So it's a quite small minority. And when we have these demonstrations and manifestations and stuff, people can come up to us and whisper. They could say, "Yeah, I really agree with you guys, but I don't dare to say that aloud." And there's no one around when
Uh-huh.
they whisper. There's no one could
Yeah.
I could
Yeah.
hear, like if you talk in a normal voice.
Yeah.
So we have really socialized this mentality. We have really made it internal, so to speak, and
Yeah.
and that is very, very dangerous. And so one aim that we have is to kind of get that out of people and say, if we can stand on the street showing these images, you as a preacher can at least talk about it from the pulpit in the church, especially when you have it in your own Bible. Come
Yeah.
on, come
Yeah.
on. So we're putting.
It's a similar situation in Scotland. In that abortion is not, it's not a live political issue. It's not a live
No.
issue in public debate. but there is quite a sizable pro-life movement in Scotland. For example, in Glasgow, they have vigils outside the abortion clinic, and sometimes they can have 100 people there. And there was a pro-life sort of rally thing in a square in Glasgow a couple of months ago, and they reckon about 500 people going along. I've heard there've been 800 people in the past, but I think that's unusual in Britain. I think maybe Glasgow is unusual. So there's a sizable bit in terms of statistics of people with some degree of pro-life opinion. I think it's similar in Scotland, 10 or 15%. Are already there, but I think the vast majority of people have never considered it. They've never heard the argument, that they've never had to. They've never been challenged with the truth about it.
And how many people live in Scotland? Is it 5 million or something?
6 million.
6 million, and Sweden have 10. So there should be a stronger pro-life movement in Sweden compared to Scotland. But I think one big difference is that your church, the Anglican Church, still have charismatic and evangelical big chunks, and so in Sweden, the state church has been totally overtaken by the politics, by the social democrat movement, and they worked from the inside out to totally secularize it. So even though the Anglican Church is quite secularized, the Swedish former state church is, I dare to bet on that, it's much worse.
Yeah. So, I mean, to say in Scotland, the heart of the pro-life movement is Catholics. There are quite a lot of Catholics in Scotland. That's the heart of it. But I think within evangelical churches, there's an increasing movement of people waking up to the issue, which is very, very encouraging. Even just in the last few months, I feel there's been quite a bit of progress in that regard. Going on to the other issue, marriage. What's the state of play in Sweden? We Sweden, by reputation, I say, is hyper liberal.
Yes, it is. The Swedish sin.
The state stepping in. So.
Yeah, I know. And the interesting thing is, like, even in the 1830s, there was books written where the ideal picture was that one man and one woman, they live together, but they're not married, and they have separate economy. And this was like early 1800s in Sweden. So this go way back, and of course not everyone would buy into it, but the intellectuals, the elite, they toyed with these ideas, and it becomes kind of cultural, or through literature it was promoted, these ideas. And Sweden, of course, we have same-sex marriage, and everyone wants to be on the forefront with the LGBTQ plus whatever movement. I don't know all the letters there, and I guess they will just add on. And our stance is this: that we want to have a unified concept of marriage. We should not have a divided concept of marriage. And if you have a unified concept of marriage, the idea is that it is a family. It is a family. It's supposed to protect the family, and therefore the kids come into the picture. So it's really a children's perspective on this, because we mean that a child has the right to have a mom and a dad if it is possible to give that. So the whole question comes to adoption. And of course you could say, well, but let the gays and the lesbians have their ceremony. And I'll go like, yeah, okay, but the point with marriage is to protect the children and protect women, and not protect men so much, but make them be responsible rather, and not just spread their seed a little here and a little there, but be responsible and be in charge of what they're doing with their body.
What's the marriage rate like in Sweden? What percentage of children are born to married parents? Do you know that? It's just under half in Scotland.
Yeah, it is around half. Half of all the marriages will end in divorce, something like that. So I do think, it could be a little different on the countryside and in towns, but it is approximately half, maybe a little more even, but I'm not so sure about the exact numbers. So I think they would be very similar there. But to us, it's really important to emphasize that if you were to say that some couples cannot adopt, gay couples, if you have like a B A marriage and a B marriage, then you will not have the unity of marriage. And we would say if someone is married, of course they could adopt. And we think children have the right to be adopted by one man and one woman, because there's a deep psychological need, we believe, for a man and a woman. So we take a strong stand for the children, and so we were even thinking about we were not so happy about the Christian Value Party in the beginning. We didn't know exactly our name, so we thought maybe we should be the Family and Children's Party. So your name is interesting for us to think about.
Yeah. I'm just going back to still thinking about marriage. I mean, I would guess it's the same in Sweden as in Scotland, that when they talk about social problems, even though we know that family breakdown, fatherlessness, etc., is a massive causal factor in them, huge. But this is totally ignored in all political and government business in Scotland. Would that be the same in Sweden?
Yeah.
It's
and I used to
never
say,
even considered.
Absolutely. And I used to say that go just click in absent fatherhood on Google, and you'll find a lot of websites, and you'll see that most criminals in jails, they have absent fathers, physically absent, or mentally absent, or emotionally absent, and sometimes abusive fathers, and very often abusive fathers. So then the question comes, like, okay, they have good moms, so why wouldn't that do the trick? What's up with the father here? So there is psychologists, they would say that the mother is very important at the beginning of a child's life, but then in the teenage period, the father becomes very important, because it's like the father that becomes the role model for how to relate to society, to people outside of the family. So I think that fathers should get some what do you call it, parental money help when the kid becomes a teenager. So then it's time for dad to stay home or take special time with the kid, and that would be something to really promote the right kind of thing in a society.
I find for the Scottish government, if they talk about fatherhood, they want to deliver the message to fathers who are living at home with their kids, or have already got kids. They want to deliver the message, you've got an important role to play. But then when they change gear to we're now thinking about same-sex couples, then you can't say that at all, obviously, because you can't talk about the vital role of fathers. So the total contradiction. Then any idea that you might have a policy that increases the chance of fathers actually being there in the family home, then that's just completely off the agenda. There's just no consideration of how to do that at all. Just to say, people watching, I've just turned on the comments. I've forgotten to do that. So do fire comments, then we'll try and pick up on some as we move along. Now, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, how does the electoral system work in Sweden? Obviously, there's a small party. It's an uphill struggle. But what's the system? Is it just first past the post, or is it proportional representation, or something in between?
We have a 4% system for the parliament. So you need to have 4%, otherwise you won't get any representation at all. And that creates a big hurdle for all small parties. And also, handing out, what do you call it, ballots, the thing you put in. We are, in a sense, discriminated against when it comes to that. We're small, and the bigger parties get the help from the structure, so to speak, of society, but we don't get that help. So and since we're small, we don't have people in every corner of the country. So it's an uphill struggle, and that actually forces us to think, like, is it only political power that is the reason for our existence? And as an apologist, I feel like this is an apologetic project for me. This is defending Christian values on the square where most journalists are just staring, meaning the political square. And why not just throw in something that stands up for Christian values right in the face of people? And this, for me, I cannot help but throwing in God into the picture. This is a calling. This is being salt and light. And yes, we're not confessional, but when it comes to referring to the Bible or referring to the Christian faith, I'm quite liberal. Meaning I will allow myself to do that.
Just go back to the system.
Yeah.
So is that automatic that if a party gets 4%, they automatically get a representative?
Yes.
In the parliament, right? Okay.
Yes. So we don't have like in this region there is only one representative. No, it's more they will gather all the votes from the whole country, and if you get more than 4%, then you will have 14.
Right. I mean, that's an easier system than Scotland. In Scotland, there's 8. It's divided into 8 regions, and you need an absolute minimum of about 5% to be in with a chance of getting a member of the Scottish Parliament. But probably 6, 7, or 8 is more likely to be what's needed. So that's I think as systems go.
Yeah, my Swedish mindset has often a problem understanding UK legislation and UK things.
It's particularly complicated in Scotland. But just go back to what you were saying though about the representation and the influence. We always say that if we were to get, or when we get, a couple of MSPs in the Scottish Parliament, the effect of those won't be that there'll be 2 votes out of 129, and those 2 votes are going to make all the difference. I mean, those 2 votes are going to make no difference. What's going to make the difference is 2 voices, 2 people putting forward a completely new set of arguments. And as you were saying, the media, that will be the most interesting thing that's going on in the Parliament a lot of the time. The others are saying the same old stale arguments, but something fresh and new. People hear it. Then as more people hear it, you get more people say, well, actually, they're making a lot of sense there. And you start shifting public opinion, and then who knows where it ends up. Do you want to tell us about the political parties in Sweden? I'm familiar a little bit with the Swedish Democrats. Do you want to start with them? How would you summarize them?
The Swedish Democrats, they are the newest kid on the block, but has become a pretty big kid. They have almost 20% of the votes, and they are the political incorrect party. They are anti-immigration, and that's their big thing. They were a little bit pro-life in the beginning. They were a little bit pro-marriage, but now they want to walk in the Pride Parade as everyone else, and they've become pro-abortion as everyone else. But they have not changed their stance on immigration, of course. And now they are, for the first time in history, a party that supports the right-wing government. The right-wing government won slightly, so they are in charge in Sweden, supported by the Swedish Democrats. So, and of course, they've been accused for being Nazis, and I would say they're not Nazis, but they are nationalists. They are nationalists, and of course, there have been some Nazi, feelings and rhetoric popping up here and there, and then they quickly get rid of that person, but then there's a new one coming and stuff. So
that's quite similar to what's happened in Britain with similar-ish sort of parties.
Yeah,
it's sometimes there's a socially conservative element within them, the bit of pro-marriage, pro-life, etc.
Yeah,
but it gets pushed out because they're trying to be broader than that. And the thing their key issue, as you say, is the immigration. In Britain, it was the EU, leaving the EU as well, would be the key uniting thing. And these other issues would be seen as potentially divisive. So they get pushed out there. I mean, that's what happens in Britain. I mean, the Reform Party is in England. I mean, they barely exist in Scotland, but in England, the Reform Party would be the biggest similar party. But again, there's really nothing in the way of social conservatism. Okay, that they'll try and take a sort of skeptical position on some of the transgender things, but they won't really get to the heart of the matter of it. They'll just try and criticize the worst excesses while staying within the mainstream, really. And the other parties, there's a Christian Democratic Party, is that right? Are they Christian?
There's a Christian Democrat Party that started in 1964 as a response to the socialist government taking away Christianity as a school subject.
Okay.
And that was like the biggest, what do you call it? When you sign names and you put it in, you have a list. Petition. Thank you. Petition. So that was, I think, the biggest petition in the history of Sweden, even some 2 or 3 million names. And still the socialist government just didn't care about it. They just pushed on. But that petition became the start of the Christian Democrat Party, which was very much based in the Pentecostal movement of Sweden. And they were good in the beginning, but then they've become pro-abortion. They are dancing in the Pride Parade. They've totally lost their Christian values in those issues where they really count. Where there's a cost to stand up for Christian values, that's where they don't want to pay the cost. And in other issues, they can be as Christian as they want, but then even the feminists or the social democrats would be kind of Christian in a way. So as long as
and they're in decline, are they, the Christian Democrats?
Oh, well, they have not declined in numbers because they are doing the math correctly. They get votes by doing this, but Christians like me and others just cannot vote for them. So they've left their niche. They left their original stance, and we've taken their place.
Who's got on the extreme progressive left? Have you got Greens from the other end of the spectrum?
We have a Green Party. We have a former communist party called the left-wing party, or the Left Party. We have the Social Democrats, that is like in between the left-wing party and the right-wing parties. We have a Center Party, which is usually the Farmers' Party, who is now very liberal, a little right-wing, but very liberal in moral issues. And then we have the Moderaterna, the moderates, which are the right-wing party, focused on individualism and right-wing economy issues, of course, and then the Christian Democrats, and then a small liberal party that has actually historically had a lot of influence. I would say, in a sense, you could say that the liberals and the Social Democrats have won the day in Sweden because some kind of socialistic state individualism / liberalism has been the mindset that has gone in under the skin of everyone, basically, except us.
Yeah. So do you want to tell us a bit about some of your other policies? We said about the pro-life, the pro-marriage. Do you have policies in other areas as well?
Yes, we do. We have a pretty it's a pretty broad program we have, I think, especially if you compare to other small parties. So we're trying to be broad. And I would say that one of the key things that is interesting with that many right-wing people find interesting with us is that we are very clear on the idea of the civil society, that because many Swedish people, they think that the state and Sweden is the same thing, and we really say no, that's not the case. The state might be like the skeleton, but the civil society with I'm not talking about the economy than businesses, but rather churches and NGOs and organizations and choirs and all of that. That's the flesh and bone, flesh of the society, so to speak. That's where the blood. That's who we are, and it's really important to give back the muscles to that part of society, because now the Socialist Democrat Party has kind of, what they want to do is they want to kind of swallow that whole part of society and put their stamp on everything. And we really want to cut that line and say no. So for instance, one thing that makes us a little controversial even among Christians is that we don't want any state money to go to churches.
Right.
And we don't want any state money to go to our equivalent to Planned Parenthood either, or to any LGBTQ movements or anything like that. Now they pour money into those organizations, and then they condition those money, of course, if it goes to churches. So this becomes a pressure. So we want all of that to be taken away, and we want instead that gifts to all these organizations should be tax-free, tax redemptive,
tax deductible.
tax deductible.
Yeah.
And we also want tax to be reduced. If someone is being hired in an NGO that has no aim of making a gain or anything like that, then there should be lower taxes on that whole chunk of, because the state should say, we are here for your sake. You are the heart of our society. We are serving you. You're not there for our sake. We should not just take tax from you and use you to build up our own thing. No, we are the skeleton and you are the life. You are the blood. You are the flesh of society. So this is something we really want to equal the playing field for all parties. And in this sense, we're not a Christian party in the sense that it's Christian interest that we focus on. The Christian, we're not a party group for the Christians, but rather we want a fair and just society where everyone is treated equal by the state and given the equal opportunities to compete about the ideological space in society.
Yeah. I mean,
the level of promoted by tax money.
No, I mean, the level of government interference in civil society in Scotland is it's almost unbelievable. I mean, they get their tentacles into virtually everything, one way or another. There's some grant available, or there's always something that they've just got some influence, some control over what's going on. It's very insidious. But people say in Scotland that civil society that barely exists because the government's influence is so wide.
And this is a very totalitarian way of thinking and functioning. And it must be called by the name that it is. It's totalitarian. It's oppressive. And like Sweden was compared to DDR, Deutsche Demokratische Republik. And the communists in Eastern Germany, they go like, how can you make Sweden socialistic and still have a capitalist economy? How did you do this? Well, the Social Democrats go like, well, we see to it that the Swedish state church is within our control. We control it, in a very insidious way. Yeah, it's smart.
So the state church in Sweden, how big is it? What percentage of people actually attend it, say? Do you know roughly?
That's the weird thing. Swedish people are, to a large degree, members of the Swedish former state church. On the other hand, even though it's not formally a state church anymore, they have built in so many political tentacles into the system that it's impractical kind of state church still, even though it's not on the paper. And I think it's some 85% of the population that are members of the state church. And there might be some 4% or 2%, I think maybe even 2% that goes to church on a regular basis.
Yeah, it's interesting there. The Church of England still got close links with the state in the United Kingdom. It is the Church of England, so that it has a version of itself in Scotland as well, but it's not called the Church of England. But we might have the situation because the leader of the Church of England, the Archbishop of Canterbury, is appointed by the UK Prime Minister, who is currently a Hindu. So we might have the situation at some point where a Hindu selects the leader of the worldwide Anglican Communion, which I think is like 77 million Christians around the world. The leader is going to be chosen by a Hindu, which is just a bizarre state of affairs. But in Scotland, that doesn't really affect us so much because the Church of Scotland doesn't have formal links with the state. That was part of what was the sort of founding principles. That would be free from the state. It doesn't have formal connections, but it reflects the ideology of the state very, very closely. I mean, it's extremely compromised. But I don't think that's particularly through state interference. That's just because of just decay of the faith of the leadership within the church. But in other areas of life in Scotland, the government's influence is remarkable. One time it comes out for us is when I say to someone, you'd be a great candidate for the Scottish Family Party. Why don't you be an election candidate for us? And so many people say, I would love to, but I'm worried about there's something I'm involved in, and there's just some element where the government's got its fingers in it somewhere or another, and it might not turn out well for me if I stand as the candidate for the Scottish Family Party. So people are just a little bit afraid, which is not, that's not open democratic society.
No.
If people are afraid to stand up and be counted as a supporter of a certain political party because they fear the government's response to that, basically.
Yeah.
So that's quite a serious issue.
Yes.
I normally say there's more to democracy than putting ballot papers in ballot boxes and adding them up. There's
Absolutely.
a lot more you need in a society for genuine open democracy to function.
And the problem with secularism is that it undermines democracy, because democracy needs strong Christian values in the bottom to function. You really need to respect love your enemy. If you don't have basis, if you don't believe that the very texture of reality, God is a humble God that wants us to love our enemies. He loved us when we were sinners. This whole mentality of not using power just for the heck of it, just because I can, but respecting others, respecting rights, and respect it because it's basic in society and it's basic in reality. Without those beliefs, you just get a fragmentized view of democracy in the end, which is super dangerous, what's going on, honestly. And I'm so sick and tired of politicians that will go like one socialist leader in Sweden. She said that she lost an election, and she said, oh yeah, obviously we had the wrong policy because the voters rejected it, so we need to change. And I go like, but so you didn't believe your politics were sound and healthy and reasonable and good? No, you just chose it because you thought it's going to give you the power. Is that the reason why? And this is like secularizing the whole idea of politics, which is
they've given up on the idea that you're there to persuade people of your philosophy.
Yes,
that's the case with the Conservative Party in the UK and in Scotland.
Yeah,
is they've completely given up on trying to present an alternative philosophy to the sort of left liberal sort of consensus. So they've given up on arguing against it. So they just try and carve out their space on the political spectrum where they'll hopefully get enough votes. But while they do that for generation after generation, support for them wanes because they're not bringing up people. They're not introducing people to their philosophy. They're not offering anything that can pull people in the other direction. So it's a one-way street.
Exactly. It's switching morality for corruption. And it's a very deep corruption. And to me, having the name the Christian Value Party, it's not just about the content in the politics, what we stand for. It's also the way we view politics and the way we behave in politics must be, there must be something different. And I remember when we started the party, I was interviewed by a lesbian journalist who I remember laying in my bed, totally relaxed with the phone next to my ear. And I was just totally relaxed. And she goes, but you're against same-sex marriage. Why are you that? And I just go like, this is not the way human beings function. This is not a way society function. Marriage is there to protect children. And this is just self-evident, honestly. And the weird thing is that this have become weird. It's not what I'm saying that is weird. The weird thing is that my position has become weird. That's what's weird. And I remember afterwards, a woman just called me and she said, I don't know if I agree with you in your political stance, but the way you answered her was just something different. It was just different. And because I answered her straight on, and I said my position, and I didn't dodge. I said what I believed, and I defended it rationally. I said more things than I just presented here. But the point was that when a journalist hears a politician saying something politically incorrect and holding fast and say, I really believe this, and this is why, then they go like, okay, so I ask about something else. They don't pursue you because they feel like they don't know what to say, really.
Yeah, their assumption is that people are going to cower in shame before them.
Exactly.
And
And
they
then
don't
they're
quite
like
know what to
blood.
do when someone's just
And when you
over.
do that, they become like bloodhounds.
Yeah,
They gonna pursue you till you admit.
yeah,
And you just appear like a hypocrite, honestly.
yeah.
So this is,
Just
yeah.
got another couple of questions. Do you have a sort of state broadcaster in Sweden?
Yes, we do. We do. And we're opposed to it because they are presumably objective, but of course they are not.
Uh-huh.
And this is a really brilliant way of brainwashing a whole population. So
Uh-huh.
yes, we are against it. They could have been worse, but they're bad enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I would say with the BBC, it's quite hard to imagine them being worse sometimes. I mean, the BBC is with the BBC, the news and the current affairs coverage is very biased, but
Yeah.
that's the least of the problems. It's the
Yeah.
drama and
Oh.
every other. It's the sport. It's every other type of program that's the real problem. Because with the news, people are alert to it. That they may be a bit more aware that there's different opinions. But in the other programs, I think it just seeps into people without them critically analyzing it, and it's hugely influential.
Yes.
On the population. Just one last. Maybe chance for another couple of questions. Do you have any Muslims in the party, or do you see the Muslims in Sweden as potential supporters for you?
We don't have any Muslims that I'm aware of, and we would have an informal rule that if you as a Muslim would join us, you have to officially take a stand against Sharia law, because Sharia law is opposed to our political program, and you cannot. You have to be clear that you're not promoting it, and everyone has to know that you are not promoting Sharia law, because that is a political stance. So in this case, being a Muslim, you have to prove that you're not a political Muslim, because if you're a political Muslim, which you should be if you're a Muslim, then you are actually not compatible with our politics.
So what would the process be then for someone to a Muslim to prove that they weren't a supporter of Sharia law?
Well, we just want this person to take a stance officially somehow, but we would even. The thing is, since we say this, we kind of turn them off.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So
I mean, if it was just made clear in your policies, would that not be sufficient? So a Muslim could look at your policies and then decide for themselves whether or not to join on the basis of your policies, rather than having a special condition for them to meet.
well, of course, this is informal what I'm saying, but the problem is there is a clash of culture here, and we just have to handle it somehow by being straightforward, because uh, Muslims join all kinds of parties, and then when when uh, when the rubber meets the road, they will not be loyal to the program or the values that they actually signed up to. They will be loyal to the mosque, or they will be loyal to Muslim values, and then you have to kick them out. So therefore, I just want to make clear that are you genuine, and to have someone say, yeah, I will not stand up for Muslim Sharia law, then they have to. There's a price to pay there, and I want them to pay that price before we have to pay a price of getting a conflict around this person. I want that person to be clear, because we know the kind of problem we will get. So why can't we ask for that?
Right. But the Scottish family parties, we've got several Muslim members. We've got Muslims involved in various ways. We would hope for a lot more, but we've got some involved. I would say in Scotland, mainstream Muslims, which I would mean maybe the sort of middle 60% of Muslims, maybe 20% who are very liberal, who spend the time in BBC studios doing interviews and things. There's maybe 20% who would have quite hardline views that I would probably find problematic. But there's maybe 60% in the middle who are described as fairly mainstream. And they're ones who often look at the family party and think, thank goodness, you're addressing the issues we want to address. and they haven't got any sort of explicitly Muslim political ambitions. That it's just their values, family values, etc. They're concerned about how their children are being educated, and it's fascinating hearing some of these Muslims, because there's a couple of Muslims in the Scottish Parliament, but they call themselves Muslims, but they're indistinguishable from the other politicians. They just completely blend in, apart from wearing the Muslim badge. And I've met quite a few Muslims who say, they're really fed up with them, that they're not actually representing their values in the Parliament. So I think there's a very significant number of Muslims in Scotland who want to bring their socially conservative values into politics, but don't see that as a specifically Muslim thing to do, which I suppose it fits in with our philosophy in the Family Party, that Christians as well bring their socially conservative values, not specifically Christian, but sharing in the socially conservative values. So we're keen to see more and more Muslims involved. Now, I've spoken to Muslims in Scotland who've had views that I would very, very, very strongly disagree with. So I think some Muslims with those views would not fit with the Family Party, but that's the same with all sorts of people.
Sure.
There's a section who would align with our philosophies, and so we want to try and bring in as many people from different backgrounds, which but I think in Sweden the situation's maybe a bit different, because things are quite a bit more fraught in terms of immigration and integration on there. I mean,
yes.
We hear stories of massively increased violence
yes.
in some cities in the south of Sweden.
We've had a lot of immigration from the Middle East, and we have a big minority of Christian Orthodox Middle Easterns, from Iraqis and Lebanese and Syrians, or from Turkey, Syrian Orthodox. And the problem there is, if we want to win their votes, if we have Muslim representatives, we won't get any of those votes, because they fled Muslim persecution. They don't trust people who are Muslims, and to wave that with that badge and say, well, yeah, I'm a Muslim. So that's why we have this. If you are a Muslim in our party, we need to be clear that you are not promoting political Islam. And if you're not, then you can say that I'm not promoting Sharia. You can say that. If you can't say that, we don't know where you're at. So you must be able to say that. Otherwise, you can't support what you're supposed to support, namely our party program.
Is there a significant sort of Islamic political movement? Or
there is the latest election of 2022. There was a new party that came on the scene, Nuance. It's called Nuance. They are nuanced. That's the Muslim party of today. And this is a new thing. This is they became, I think, the biggest party outside the parliament.
Okay. So
they are starting to organize, and in my eyes, I think that's a good thing, because then that will make Swedish people wake up.
Yeah. Now, I would say in Scotland, as the Family Party, this is not a reason for what we're doing, but what I would hope would be a consequence of the Family Party is that Muslims would never feel the need to start a Muslim party. Now, I would be really disappointed if Muslims felt they wanted to do that. So we say to Muslims, look, you've got your values. A lot of Muslims, your values are very different from the mainstream of the Scottish government, the Scottish political system. Come and join us, because our values are more similar to you. Yes, if there was a Muslim party in Scotland, we feel as if, that would be really disappointed. We'd want people because social conservatives are often traditional religious believers, so we want them all in the Family Party. I think politically with it, that's much.
And I'm sympathetic to that idea. I mean, fine. It's just that in Sweden we have 800,000 Muslims, almost 10% of the population, and with I'm not sure exactly how high the immigration is, because it seems like politicians might say we have to lower it, but then we don't lower it anyway. So we continue to take in volumes. Mostly Muslims. And when that population grows, even though you have 60% Muslims who are, just well-behaved, good citizens, and with basically good values most of the time. Then you have 40% who lean towards some kind of oppressive political Islam, and then you have a certain percentage of those, maybe 10%, who would even support Al Qaeda and those kind of movements. And if you have like 1 million people, 10% of that is pretty much, you know. So the problem would just increase the more people you take in. If you have a small Muslim population, I would be very sympathetic to your strategy, but in Sweden the Muslim population is quite big, so they will organize themselves politically sooner or later anyway, and we won't be able to swallow them. We will just create conflicts in our own realm.
I think the sort of progressive establishment, they believe that Western culture, it's like a universal solvent. You can put what you like in it, and it will dissolve it, and it will just become part of the whole. But it's not true. Maybe it's true with certain levels of integration, certain types of people. Maybe it's true, but they believe it's just always going to happen. It doesn't matter who and where from goes into the mix. They'll always be able to just turn them all into through the sausage machine, and they'll come out as standard issue progressive Swedes or Europeans or whatever.
I know.
It's just
because they are religiously blind. They just don't understand religion. They don't understand how deep it goes. They don't understand the connection between religion and culture, religion and values. They are starting to understand this the hard way, unfortunately. But now it's kind of too late.
Now I'm just going to announce a few things I forgot to announce at the beginning, and then we'll just wrap up. But just very quickly, I forgot to mention these. Saturday afternoon, East Kilbride, 2:00. That branch is going to go out to have a stall in the streets of placards, leaflets, flags, and I think a meeting afterwards. That's East Kilbride, 11:00. All the details are on social media. Aberdeen, we're going to candidate in a by-election, and February the 18th and 19th, that's Saturday and Sunday, they're having a sort of action weekend, lots of leafleting, etc. If you can get to Aberdeen to help them out, our candidate Amy Stratton, so you can get there as well. Ayrshire, they're having a meeting in Irvine on the 24th of February, 7 p.m. And again, there's details on social media. Do get along to any of those if you can. Right, Matt, it's fascinating to speak to you. The parallels with Scotland are many.
Yes,
many.
definitely.
I think your thinking as well mirrors ours very closely in a lot of areas as well. I'll send you a copy of my book. You might find it interesting.
Oh, thank you.
Well.
I would love to.
Pop on the page. I would love to have you back on the live stream at some point in the future to give us an update of how things are going. But we hope the party continues to grow.
Yeah, I hope so too.
But
can I just ask whether you have any ideas of joining ECPM, the European Christian Political Movement? Have you heard of that? And is that something I think you would fit very well into that?
I've heard of it, and that's something we looked at quite a while ago, but I can't remember. The details of it. If you want to send some details over, we can have a look at that.
Yeah, because
I am definitely aware of it.
Yeah, of course, it has to do with the EU, the Union, and you left it. So so of course, but there is political parties in Armenia and I think Georgia, and it's a broad political movement, and they have a think tank, and I just feel like that our party will be nourished and inspired by joining our European friends and sister parties, and it would be lovely to have you guys on board.
We've got connections with the is it called the Family Party in Lithuania? I'm speaking to a Dutch politician in a week or so's time, because there's a couple of Dutch parties, isn't there, on the same sort of wavelengths?
They are like in the core of this movement, the Netherlands, the Dutch people, I think.
Right. Well, great to meet you, and I say we look forward to hearing from you again in a few months. Right. Thanks for everyone for watching. Again, didn't get to any comments after all, but we appreciate those, and those of you watching later as well. I hope you've enjoyed it. So,
thank you very much, Richard. I appreciate this. Thank you.